There we go. Hello. Welcome back to Theory Time with me, Carly, and
Hi, I'm Jason.
this is part 4, probably final part of our Stormlight Archive 5 Theory Time. A lot of this is based on Jason's theories for what is coming in the next Stormlight Archive book. We've done 3 previous parts, obviously, so please go check those out as well. And I guess we'll just get right into it.
This is kind of how it goes, though. Every time we have a discussion, it's like, wow, where did the time go?
Yeah.
It's like I think we meant this to be like one video, and it ended up being hours long. We're like, ooh, okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to stretch this out into other videos.
Part of that's my fault. I get into tangents.
Well, I think we both do.
Yeah.
So we're in part 4, which I'm calling the wrap up. So I've broken Brandon's book, which we're calling Knowledge of Withheld Truth, which I still like as a title. I don't actually think that's what Brandon's going to end up calling it at this point. I think
It's a little too on the nose.
Well, I think it's okay for titles to be on the nose. I just don't think he will because, I don't know, from comments that he's made during his other live streams, it seems like he's going another way.
Well, and one that he said is a high contender for him right now is one that he wrote up, which was Knights of Woeful Truth. That still sounds like a lot, though. It's a bit of a mouthful. I think he likes concise titles, especially to the books in the book. Anyway.
Yeah, so I have a feeling that he's not going to go with anything like the title that we have, but, you know, we'll see.
Kings of Way.
Kings of Wada. But so we're in part 4. I'm calling the wrap up, and I've really just touched on the major characters: Dalinar, Shallan, Adolin, Kaladin, Zeth, and that's basically it. You know, it's hard to get more specific later on, simply because without actually writing the entire book. So I got kind of specific in the beginning, which I don't think any of you will actually disagree with how I think the book will start. That seems to be pretty easy to guess. But the ending, especially part 3, and then in this part, there might be some things that you might disagree with. This part will be a lot shorter, because I think Brain is going to spend the last quarter of the book just summing things up. I think it's going to be just a Sanderlanche for the last quarter. He's going to be just putting the characters where he wants them to be for Era 2 of the Stormlight series.
And let it be known that he knows how to Sanderlanche in length. If you've read the last book of the Wheel of Time series, then you will know that he can do like 300-page Sanderlanches.
Yeah.
Like entire book.
So I've got the characters in a specific order on purpose. And I think the first character that we'll start with for the wrap up is going to be Zeth. So I think this mostly because it's not a palindrome, but what does he call it in the book?
Kedek.
The Kedek kind of version, because in part 1 we kind of left with Zeth, and so in part 4 I think we're going to start with Zeth, kind of wrap up his story. So I think at this point, you know, he's decided to be a peacekeeper, where everyone, and it kind of helps everyone establish their homes. So he becomes a version of kind of, if you imagine Nail mixed with Dalinar, right? He becomes Justice. Mm-hmm. But as I mentioned in the last video, I think his final ideal is going to be, I will be who Dalinar was supposed to be. So his idea of what he was supposed to be, so instead of latching onto a person, he's latching onto an ideal of a person, much like we do with like Christianity and things like that, where we latch on to what we think this person is or who they are. And so I think that's what his 5th ideal will be. I think that's where we kind of leave Zeth. I think that is a good place to sum up his arc. So I think if we talk about Zeth's arc overall, he goes from, I think he starts in prison. Carly disagrees. I
disagree because that's not how book 4 ends.
Well, I still think he starts in prison. I think he will have a moral conflict of what do I do if we have a Dalinar versus Nail conflict, because he has his old master versus kind of his current master, and then with Dalinar dying, I think that's really going to throw a wrench in his ideals. I think that's something Brandon really likes to do.
With the Skybreakers being the way that they are, though, which I feel like a lot of them probably model their lives after Nail, I don't think it'll be as much of a conflict for Szeth to go against Nail, because Nail is so flip-floppy already. He's like, I just go wherever I think is the right thing to do, and so Szeth is going to be like, alright, well, the right thing to do is to follow Dalinar, so...
But that's what I'm saying, because if Dalinar dies and becomes a servant of Odium, I don't think Szeth is going to go become a servant of Odium.
No, but I don't think it's going to be as much of an issue for him going away from Nail, though.
No, and I don't think it's the Nail thing, but it's more of a, this is the man who has taught me everything that I've needed to know about being a Skybreaker. So it's
and then this is the man who taught me everything I needed to know about being a good person.
Exactly, yeah. And so, but I don't think it's going to be framed in the context of I like Nail. I think it's going to be more framed in the context of his ideal, because I think that's a promise. Brandon talks about promises and then breaking or fulfilling them. I think the promise that Brandon has made that he needs to fulfill is Nail warns him. He says, don't put your ideal on a person.
Yeah. Because Nail already went through that same issue where he had essentially bonded himself to whatever, not Kelek, not Jezrien, not Talon, not... What is his name? Who's the Oathbringer guy?
Ishar.
Ishar, not Oathbringer, but yeah, Ishar.
I know what you meant.
But yeah, he essentially bonded himself to Ishar to do whatever Ishar told him to do.
Yeah, so I think we're going to have basically a good version of that, right? But I think that's going to be Szeth's struggle. I think that's going to be his arc, is because I think the book essentially, more or less, because I have it in part 2, where Dalinar and Nail fight. So I think the Contest of Champions basically happens in the beginning, and then the rest of the book is kind of dealing with the outcome.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what Szeth's struggle is going to be, is Dalinar dies. So whether it's Dalinar versus Nail, whatever, I think that's Szeth's struggle. I think Szeth...
Do you think Nail would willingly be a champion of Odium? Terravodium?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
For the purposes that I think Taravangian wants.
Fair enough.
I think he would, because he's basically switched sides, right?
Yeah. Well, because he's like, you guys were the original people of this planet, so therefore you guys are the ones who are correct. So I'm going to help you.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it's Nail or not. It may not be, but I think ultimately Dalinar loses, and I think that's what causes Szeth's struggle.
I want to see a fight of Talon with somebody though, because he's supposedly the most skilled person.
So I have a theory for that, which we'll get at the end, which I'm going to call the epilogue.
Okay.
But for this part so far, I think what we're going to have is Szeth's arc is the struggle of I put my oath on a person, but now I don't want that. Yeah. What do I do? And I think it's going to ultimately end up being, it's okay, I can aspire to this person, or the idea of what this person was supposed to be, which is where I kind of came up with his ideal.
Well, so I'm still curious how like the Skybreaker's oaths work, because his third was, I will, follow Dalinar. I don't know the exact words, but it was basically, I'll follow Dalinar and do his will. Mm-hmm. But his fourth is going to be about returning to the Shin lands and dealing with his people. Like, he's already said, this will be my fourth idea. Like, he went up to Dalinar and he's like, this is what I need to do. This is the next step in my journey. And Dalinar's like, okay, good luck. Which is why I'm pretty sure Szeth is going with Kaladin, who's going to go to Shinovar. But anyway, hang on. So by going into his fourth ideal, does that make his third ideal not exist anymore? Because it's not like they're building on each other. They're just different ideals.
So I think that's another, and I thought about that, and I don't think ideals have to build on each other. I think because Shalans don't necessarily build on each other.
No,
they're just separate truths.
Yeah. So, but does it undo that kind of oath to follow whatever Dalinar says.
So,
not undo it, but just kind of be like, this one's just done. Now I'm on to the next one.
Not if he gives him permission, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I thought about this, and I thought about Szeth going to the land of Shinovar and helping the Shin people. So one, I think he's going to be in prison, but two is I think there's a lot more going on in Shinovar than we know, and I think that is a story that they're going to save for the second era. I think it has to do with the heralds. I think Ishar is up to just no good, and so I don't know. I know his books are, this big, but I don't think there's going to be time to go over that. Maybe there will be, maybe there won't. But I think having him swear the ideal of I will be a person like Dalinar was supposed to be is a good place. But also then he becomes basically a good version of Nail, right? He's like, I will be a peacekeeper and a leader, and I will free people and establish their rightful homes, which I think ties into Shinovar. He's like, okay, so now that I have sworn this ideal to be like how Dalinar was, I can still fulfill my want, even if it's not an oath, or maybe it is, of going back to Shinovar and helping those people. But then that becomes something we deal with in the next book, because I think Szeth doesn't die. I think he's a character that carries on into the next book.
Yeah. It'll just be really interesting, because, I mean, I'm pretty sure Szeth is going to go to Shinovar with Kaladin.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the Shin are following an Unmade and, like, worshipping it.
Yeah.
And they have to go to Shinovar to collect Ishar to try to bring him back to the tower to try and heal him within the 10 days in order for Dalinar to learn more about his
How to bring back the Oath Pact.
Well, no, not just that, but just how to use his bondsmith powers. Mostly the bondsmith powers.
But I think it's the bondsmith powers in order to bring back the Oath Pact.
I do think he's still on that track, but I think literally everybody else is like, Dalinar, don't do that.
So,
but Dalinar being like, no, this is the right thing. He's
so
like...
I think your way could work, and my way could also work.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that would change anybody's arc that I've established so far. Because I think if you do that, I think it'll be a lot of good seeding for the second era. Because I truly believe, and we'll find out if I'm right or wrong, I truly believe Ishar is going to be the villain. He is the villain. And they're setting him up and building him up to be the villain in the second act.
He's a major megalomaniac.
Yeah, and so I think it would be interesting for, like, in your version, if they bring him back, kind of clean him up and get him a little bit sane, only to find out a sane version of Ishar is maybe worse because he's actually evil.
He can be more conniving that way.
Yeah, and so then
think it through logically.
Maybe that's how he manipulates Dalinar into breaking the Oath Pact, as I have in my version. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, who's next?
All right, next on the list I have is Yasna. So I think it's good to start with Szeth, establish his. I think his is also maybe the easiest arc to finish. And then Yasna, because we need to establish where Yasna's at. I know I haven't touched on her much throughout the story, but we need to establish where she's at because she's going to be basically the main focus of the next book. So there's going to be a lot in there that's going to pertain to Yasna, but I don't know it. I have no idea. Because in my mind, Yasna's not really a main character. I would say she is a B character.
With heavy ties to the main characters.
With heavy ties to the main characters. And I think a lot of her stuff is probably going to tie in with Wit's stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Well, and so we're just going to get bits and pieces of what Yasna's doing, right? And I think it's going to be preparing for war, preparing to lead, that sort of stuff throughout the book. And so I think that's where we find Yasna at the end of the book, as she has convinced everybody and also kind of convinced herself, it is time for me to lead. And I think everybody throughout the book, whatever she has done, will have convinced them. Yes.
Well, she's already done a whole bunch of wacky stuff. I mean, she put herself on the front lines of the war in her shard plate. She changed the rules on the combat to the death challenges. She's changing lots of different women's rights.
But there's a thing to be said about changing too much too fast.
Yeah,
And
I do agree with her idea, though, that it's like, change is already happening, let's just get it all over with.
And no, I agree with her, and I think a lot of people do agree with her, which makes it easy to accept. But we have to remember, in this world, it's very patriarchal.
Yeah.
And so they don't...
She's the first queen.
Yeah.
Of Kholinar.
So I think this is going to be kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. They're going to be like, whoa, okay, you want to change the challenge to the death thing? You want to change this? Fine. You want to lead? Heck no.
Yeah. Like, no, you're supposed to leave that to your generals because men and war. And she's going to be like,
And I think a part of that debate, blah, 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 is going to be, well, what about Adolin? What about Renarin? What about, I don't know. I don't know. I think they're going to throw out all these other options and be like, what about these people? And I think everybody's going to be off the board. I think Yasna's going to be the only choice.
Well, yeah, because Adolin's already like, he's like, I already turned down the throne, which is why Yasna has it. And Renarin was like, I just can't, so that's why Yasna has it.
Well,
so, like, literally, she was the only option to have the throne in the first place. And then they're going to be like, okay, now we need someone to lead us to war. And she'll be like, I volunteer as tribute. They'd be like, that's the wrong series. And she's going to be like, just kidding. And then they're going to be like, but you really can't. And she's like, but yes, I can.
But I think that's kind of going to be what it is, right? They're going to try to pull a little switcheroo on us. Like, we were fine with you being queen because we knew Dalinar was there.
Yeah.
Dalinar's gone. Well, now we need a man in place. Let the man do the man business. But I think Renarin is going to be gone. We'll get to him in a second. And I think Adolin is also going to be gone, which I kind of got into in the last video. We'll touch on here again. And so I think she's going to be like, it's either me or you guys figure out who else you want. Like, it's...
Yeah, or it's a new family's ascending.
Yeah, and so I think she's going to prove herself through logic, but also through, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
This is it. I am the best choice you have. And so they're going to be like, okay.
Darn it.
I guess we're going to have a woman lead.
Or what they say, storm it.
Stormin' women. So I think that's an important place to place her because I think those are the challenges she's going to be dealing with.
Yeah. So
in
not
the next
not
book.
just being the throne holder, but also the military leader in a way.
The true leader, right?
Yeah.
And I think she's going to have more political nonsense, which she hates.
Well, it's
she's
important that they made the distinction that Dalinar is the king of Eritharu. They basically let Eritharu be its own kingdom at that point, which is why they needed a queen for Kholinar, or king or a queen for Kholinar, which is why they chose Yasna, so there could be that distinct separation. But Dalinar's still kind of around, and when Dalinar's around in any form, everybody's in his shadow.
Right. I mean, they're like, ooh, High King. So, like, there was always...
Yeah, there was that nonsense, and then he was finally like, okay, fine, don't do the High King stuff. And they're like, yay.
Yeah, there was always a man above her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why people accepted it.
Yeah.
Because even if they had a problem, they would just go around her and be like, well, we're just going to go talk to Dalinar.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we leave her. I think that's where Yasna's story goes. I haven't really established her arc throughout my theory.
She's a wild card, though. Like,
she is. But,
she will do whatever she wants.
But also, I think it's hard to establish where she goes because she's a B character. Mm-hmm. You can kind of do whatever you want with B characters. Once we get into the next era and we truly establish where she goes and what she's going to do, then it'll be easier to kind of see her future. But right now, she's a B character. That's where I think she ends up at the end of the book. Next, we'll touch on Renarin. I think Renarin leaves. I think this is where we get the true separation, the setup for the next series. I know he's supposed to be a main character in the next book. Mm-hmm. I think he's supposed to be the point of view for book 2 of the next series. Mm-hmm. But I think a part of that is because we now have this spiritual and physical divide amongst
Relaine?
Yeah, his people.
The singers.
The singers.
Or sorry, no, they're the listeners. The singers are the ones who have accepted the views. So the listeners.
So amongst the listeners, and I think you have, and I touched on this last time, I think you have Renarin and Relaine on 2 different sides. And I think Renarin is going to be on the side of Ja'anat, and I think you have R'lain on the side of Ba'ad Mishram, and I think that's where we've kind of thrown those pieces into the pie, where I think we have Ja'anat basically aspiring to be a new god, and I think you have Ba'ad Mishram, who is
freedom for everyone.
Freedom for everybody and everything.
Yep.
But I think that makes her kind of chaotic good.
Yeah.
And so I think in that way,
Just funny story though, guys. Like, neither of us play D&D, but Jason here uses like the chaotic neutral, the chaotic
all
good
the time.
all the time now.
it applies. It's such an easy way to explain things.
It is. So thank you, D&D.
Yeah. So I think R'lain realizes that and will be on the side of good, and will kind of stay with Bridge 4 maybe, or maybe even go with Venli and help her people. So maybe he won't be with Bridge 4, but
he did get her back to the listeners as they were getting closer to Eritharu. But then he's like, "But I can't go with you yet." And then he went back to Bridge 4.
I've established his arc, and I think it's going to be a back and forth until we have this true division towards the end of the book of Ja'anat and Ba'ad Mishram.
But my people.
So I think at the end of this book, you have Renarin choosing Ja'anat. I'm too different. I don't want to be with the humans anymore. I'm going to go with the listeners.
Yeah, I'm too weird for the humans, and I'm too human for the listeners.
Yeah, and so I think, R'lain is going to go back to his people. I think he's going to go with Venli and finally go back to his people, but following Ba'ad Mishram. So now we have a divide within the listeners, which I think is important for the next era, because I think there's going to be a lot of kingdom interplay drama, which Yasna is going to have to deal with, which is something that is why I put Yasna first, establishing her as I am now, I'll just call her High Queen. High Queen, and she makes all the decisions. I think that's important to establish first, because then when you get into Renarin and R'lain, you're like, oh yeah, because there's schisms and things going on over here, but there's also Shinovar. Like, she's like, she's gonna have a lot to deal with in the next book.
Yeah.
Which I think leads us next into kind of major characters. So Dalinar, in my theory, is dead or pseudo-fused, right?
Yeah, so he will have been turned in. If he loses, he will have been turned into a fused. Not even just pseudo, like actually a fused.
I'm calling him pseudo-fused because he's not a listener.
Yeah, but like Odium.
Fused-esque.
Odium has not given anybody the gift of being a fused since the very first ones, and I think it was only singers and who became fused because that's just kind of who existed back then. But he's even hinted to like Moash. He's like, yeah, you could. He's like, but you're not gonna become one because I don't do that for people anymore. This I think will instead be like a forced. Your spirit will turn into much like the fused spirits, but you'll inhabit human bodies as opposed to singer bodies anytime you return.
Yeah, I don't know about the inhabiting thing, because I think it's going to be very similar to the Returned and Warbreakers.
That's true, because humans don't have like a gem heart for
yeah, I think they're just going to basically be immortal. I don't know. We'll see. I think that will be more explained in this book. I think we'll finally have an idea of what a fused is, or at least a better idea, because I think, and part of my theory is that is something we're going to deal with in the next era, is the fused. I think the problem we really nail down in here is Odium and the fused, right? And in my theory so far, we've dealt with Odium. And the current listener fused. And so, on that note, the next character I have after Renarin and R'lain is Navani. So, with Dalinar gone, so in my theory, Dalinar loses in the Contest of Champions. He is then used as a tool to threaten Eritharu, because what we have is Navani's a bondsmith. So I think Taravangian says, you need to free me. this is what I want. Because I think Taravangian and Odium are a good match, which makes them very dangerous as a shard. And so I think...
Except, remember, he can't pursue any...
I think I disagree with that. I think that's what they've told us, and I don't think that's what it's going to be. Because it's much like Wit. Wit gets around the rules all the time. Taravangian is very Wit-like. He's like, I can break the rules without breaking the rules.
Yeah. He was even like, when Cultivation showed up to him at the very end of the book, he's like, she has no idea what she has unleashed on the Cosmere. Because when he obtained the Shard of Odium, he essentially became, healed again. So he became his best self. And while Taravangian was a slow thinker, he wasn't stupid.
Yeah.
So now that he's back to normal speed, if not faster speed, now his smartness is just off the wall.
So I think Odium would have used that to leverage them, but I think they're going to defeat the Dalinar force, because I think everybody's going to come and protect Uruthuri against Dalinar.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's when Ba'ad Mishram and the listeners kind of come and help out, because now there's kind of this unified everybody on the planet versus Odium and the Fused.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think finally they kind of get the Fused away, etc., and they defeat Dalinar or the Fused to the point where Odium has to withdraw, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think Dalinar's going to be dead. It's possible, and they might even kill him with the Racium knife. I still think the Racium knife becomes a super important item. So maybe that's how they defeat him. I don't know yet. But I think in that vein, we're talking about Navani, right? I think Navani is left at the end of the book as a part of part 4. She is the new spiritual leader. She is the bondsmith. Mm-hmm. So I would...
There's also still room for one more to bond with the Night Watcher.
Yeah, but I think that's something we get into more in Era 2.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's room, but I don't think we get into that here. But I think she becomes the ipso de facto spiritual leader. They're like, okay, you're the bondsmith. You're our new leader, or spiritual leader. And which I think is only going to play into more of the conflict that we'll see in Era 2. Because if you have Navani as the spiritual leader and then Yasna as the actual leader, they're like, man, we pulled a 180. We went from all men to all women. And so I think it's going to cause a lot of conflict in Era 2, which I think is a perfect place to leave them. Mm-hmm. Is in a place of, ooh, this is going to be difficult. And I think she's going to establish as a part of her spiritualness, whatever she does, more research into light. I think we're going to get so much knowledge dropped on us about light and investiture in this book.
Too.
And I think it all comes from Navani.
I am personally most excited for what's going to happen with Navani. Like, her and the sibling together, they're both scientists. They both like to explore and push the boundaries and make new stuff. So I'm just really excited to see all the advancements in, like, Rosharan technology that are going to happen. Because with what they just discovered about how to make lateral movement go further, because what it used to be was as you moved one gemstone, the corresponding gemstone would go at the same pace. But now they figured out that if you take the light from this gemstone and put it into a larger gemstone, when this one moves an inch, this one moves 2 inches, so it's almost double. So I think they're just going to keep going, and they're going to figure out how to physically get to another planet on Roshar, because they're going to be able to make it go that much further.
So I do. I think Roshar is going to be kind of the center of it all, right? They're really going to push the boundaries of investiture. Not only are they going to have the strongest form of investiture, but I think they're going to be one of the most creatives. Mm-hmm. They won't be as nuanced as, say, Allomancy, because you get really fine control, but I think I would say Allomancy is the mechanism.
In sheer power, though.
Stormlight is going to be
insane.
Is going to be the AC/DC of electric current. while Allomancy is kind of like the light bulbs and stuff, like all the electronics. The really fine takes a lot of knowledge and whatever to do this. Anyway, that's off topic.
I'm excited for it though.
But I think that's where we leave Navani. I think it establishes a good controversy, a good thing, something to get excited about. Her light research, but also having a female spiritual leader. So I think that's a good place to leave her.
Okay.
And I say Navani at this point, and so I'm trying to layer in the conflicts, because this is how Brandon does it. It's going to be a and so then the book ends.
The levels of mind blown.
Yeah, and I think something I've touched on, which I think a lot of this is going to be foreshadowed, right? So they're not all going to be surprises, but it's going to get our mind working in certain ways. So Navani is the spiritual leader. Next, I think we're going to touch on Adolin leaving. I think truly leaving the planet. So I say this because I think I've mentioned this, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I think in their running abouts, Azure perhaps joins Adolin on his running abouts, goes to like save Shallan, but Shallan's dying or something. And so if she dies, if she doesn't die, we're not really talking about Shallan here. I think Adolin is going to go with Azure
to Nalthus.
To probably Nalthus, but into the Cosmere is going to be the implication, right? Like, I think she'll say something to the effect of, "Come with me if you want to live." It'll be
I just always really wanted to say that.
I just really wanted to say that. I think it'll be something to the effect of, "Come with me, and I will help you heal Shallan or restore her in some form," which I think is going to be, we're going to be like, "Oh, is she going to turn into a Returned?" Because that would be really interesting, because I think we're going to get it much like here on Roshar, where they're mixing and matching lights. I think we start to form the Cosmeric Avengers, where we have mixing and matching of investitures. And I think that will start with perhaps this group, right? Where we have Azure, we'll have Adolin, and then we'll have Shallan, who Adolin is something different. But then if Shallan becomes kind of a light weaver, multi-personality, returned, like, I think that would be a really interesting path for her to go. I think it's either that or she dies. That's my one death theory. I think it's either that or she dies. But even if she dies, I think Adolin goes into the Cosmere. And I think that because of what I think his ideal is. And you might not remember, but I'm going to say it anyway in case you guys don't remember, is I think his ideal, it's going to be his third ideal. It's going to be Dalinar has retreated. They defeated him at Irithiru because they used him to kind of threaten Irithiru.
Adolin doesn't have any ideals.
I think he's going to.
So he's just going to go 1, 2, 3
Yeah, I think, well, because 1 and 2, and we've seen this before, you can swear multiple ideals at once. I think Adolin jumps straight to third. I think that's another way it's going to make him different. And I don't even know if he's going to go beyond third. I actually think it would be interesting if he just kind of stays at third. But I think if he swears an ideal, and even if he doesn't, I think this will be his apparatus Mandai. So it's going to be his code, right? The thing that he wants to do, which is going to be, and I've summed it up in an ideal. It's, I will seek those who are lost, which fits for me into the Edge Dancer ideal construct,
theirs is
right?
about paying attention to those who are forgotten by others. So.
Yeah, but I think his is going to be more as I will seek those who are lost. And I think his intention with that, right, is Dalinar's out there. I'm going to go get him. So that's part number 1.
Okay.
And then if Shallan doesn't die, but also kind of becomes this thing, because I have her getting. They use the Racium dagger to perhaps seal her in a gem or something. I don't know, and then turning her into some sort of return in my long theory. And I think that also, seeking Shallan, trying to restore her. She is lost. She's, gone.
Yeah.
And so I think that fits. So even if it's not about Shallan, I think one way or another, Adolin leaves. Partly because he is different, right? He's like, I am different. Mm-hmm. I am not your regular Knight Radiant. I have a Deadeye blade. So maybe he doesn't swear ideals. Maybe he does. I don't know, but I've given that as his, Apparatus Mandi.
What if Maya swears the ideals?
Well, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. He almost becomes more like Hersprin, even though they would still be the same way of she's the weapon. But in healing her is her having to swear the ideals to Adolin.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. And then that's how she comes back to life.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I would be okay with that. Yeah. But I also think it fits within the arc that I've given Adolin in my theory, right? Mm-hmm. Which is Adolin goes from, starts off at the beginning of the book learning more about Maya. Mm-hmm. I think she starts to become more awake. And then he goes to confront his father and tell him, hey, don't restore the Oath Pact, but then he dies, so he doesn't get that.
Yeah.
So then he goes to save Shallan, but Shallan dies, gets stabbed, wounded, whatever.
She's trying to get Bad Omishram, by the way, if you guys don't remember.
Oh, in my theory, yeah.
In his theory, Shallan has gone off to try and
get Bad Omishram ways, yeah.
Because she knows that that's what
Mraize
wants. But I'm not sure it's specific. I think you even said this. I'm not sure it's specifically Bad Omishram that he wants. I think it's whatever she's contained in. Whether it's an aluminum box or perfect gem, whatever it is, they want that. Aluminum box with a perfect gem.
Or an aluminum box gem. I don't know. But whatever she's sealed in, they want that. I 100% believe that.
I wonder if because she is a 3-tiered name, she would need something stronger to contain her, like a cage or whatever. But because thinking of like Nargol, the Thrill, he's just contained in the gemstone that was dropped in the sea. And so far, it hasn't gotten out of the gemstone, and it may not, but that may be because it's a very base sprint unmade.
Yeah, Bad Omishram is special. So I think she's in a special container. Well, because the not Nightbloods, the Ghostbloods. The Ghostbloods basically have said, we've tried every way that we know how to transport investiture. It doesn't work.
Yeah. And for those who read the Stormlight 5 archive, or Stormlight Archive 5 prologue, you would know that Gavilar was meeting with Calic and Nail on the night that he died, and he presented them an aluminum box. And Calic was like, ooh, this might actually work.
Yeah.
We don't know fully what that work means. I think it's because Calic just wants away from the Rosharan system, which is why he's at lasting integrity, trying to get the honor sprint to get him away from the Rosharan system. But that aluminum box is... it doesn't just block out investiture, it keeps it contained.
Yeah.
And the issue with the heralds leaving is if you put them in a gemstone, but you don't contain the investiture, it just dissipates and they actually die.
So I think it might be even a combination, right? They might need the aluminum box and this gemstone, because I think the gemstone has to also be related to how much investiture they have, right? You couldn't contain the Nargul in...
a brome.
In a brome.
It had to be the King's Drop.
Well, so I think the Ghostbloods want this for their own purposes, but so do the Heralds, right? So they can't just use any old gem. Mm-hmm. I think they need... Because we see that with the knives, right? Mm-hmm. They killed Jezrien, they stab him, and his personality basically leaks out. He's gone.
Yeah. They have to use the specific pole stone, which is the 10 different gemstones that match that person. So for Jezrien, who is of the Windrunners, I think the Windrunners is what?
I don't know.
Sapphire, maybe? I can't remember. But I just had a thought, though. Because I guarantee you somebody's gonna be like, well, if that's the aluminum box, then, and you think that Bada Mishram's also locked in something that contains her, well, it can't be the same aluminum box. What if Gavilar knew where Bada Mishram was being held, saw it was an aluminum box, and basically just created something after it?
So it could be that, right?
Gavilar is totally sneaky, and yes, he's still a jerkwad. But what if he knew? And he's just like, I'm not going to tell anybody because nobody else needs to know. What if he knows? What if he knew where Mishram was?
I think he could know. That would be interesting, and maybe that's how they all find out. Because I have Shallan and Adolin dividing basically at the Oath Gate.
Yeah.
But they could divide maybe at Irithiru, because maybe Navani finds out through some of Gavilar's notes where Bada Mishram is. So then she goes. So maybe they travel together.
Go to the tower,
it
and
could
then
be.
Shallan leaves.
It could be.
Not that it really changes much.
But I think having the two missions where Adolin's like, I gotta stop my father, she's like, I gotta stop Mraize.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes too much sense.
Yeah.
I think posing it as a race against time also makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want something to keep the tension going, right? Are we gonna get there in time? And so I think they're gonna go their separate ways.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think when they meet Azure at the gate, because she couldn't get through the
cultivation perpendicularity at
perpendicularity.
The peaks.
I think this is how we get Azure back into the story, but I think this is also how we get Azure traveling with Shallan, because Adolin's gonna be like, "Do this for me, please."
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, come on, who says no to Adolin? He's so convincing.
Nobody says the golden retriever.
Yeah, he's the golden retriever.
I
So
love him.
So I think she's gonna go with Shallan. She'll be like, fine. But then when they run into Mraize, the whole conflict, blah blah blah. But also getting back to Adolin, I think that's something else that Adolin needs for his arc, is that when he comes and finds Shallan down and out, he's gonna go against Mraize, and Adolin, for the first time in his life, is gonna get humbled.
He's gonna lose a sword fight.
And Brandon's almost as much admitted to something like this is coming. Because people have asked the question in spoiler live streams, is Adolin the best? And Brandon's like, he thinks he's the best, but he'll find out very quickly he's not. So
I think
Zahel,
as a general whole, he is the best.
Yeah.
But there's the few who are better.
So Zahel is a special case. I think obviously we could, like, even Adolin would be like, I don't think I could take him.
Yeah.
But I think if push come to shove, you put Dalinar against Adolin, it would be a tough battle. Tough, but Dalinar would still win.
Yeah.
But I think those are the only people where Adolin's like, yeah, I don't know if I can beat you.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody else, Adolin goes into it being like, yeah, I'm going to win this.
Yeah.
And so coming up against Mraize, I think he goes into the battle already basically having lost, right? Because he thinks he's going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And Mraize is going to kick his butt. I think he's going to do very well. I think enough that it drives Mraize back without killing anybody else, or maybe Azure kind of saves everybody. I don't know. But I think Mraize wins, gets away, gets what he wants, because I think that's important to the story as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Ghostbloods need to get what they want. If they don't, it's kind of disappointing, right?
Yeah.
I think they have to get what they want. I also think if Shallan dies, that gives Adolin more purpose to go into the Cosmere, because he's like, Shallan wanted to stop them. I'm going to take that on myself now. Now I'm going to stop them.
Yeah.
So either way, I'm 100% on the fence that Adolin is going into the Cosmere. I think taking him out of the story makes it interesting, but also removes him from the, like, because if Adolin sticks around, there's going to be a constant pressure for him to lead.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to.
Nope.
And I don't think it fits with his character.
No.
If he's like, and he doesn't have to stick around for being the person who helps a Deadeye. I think we're going to see that there's going to be more of those in the future.
Well, yeah, because I mean, just Shallan working with Testament for a few days, that was her first blade, had already shown like marked improvement.
Yeah. So I think that's where we're headed. I think Adolin goes into the Cosmere. I think it makes too much sense.
Okay.
So I think we've basically covered that. Oh, except for Azure, I think is kind of grumpy. I don't think she's gonna be oh yeah, I'll just help you out of the goodness of my heart sort of thing.
Oh, Vivenna.
Yeah.
How thee has changed.
Well, I don't think she's gonna help someone out of the goodness of their heart, as convincing as Adolin is. I think it's gonna be, I didn't realize you were fighting the Ghostbloods.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna be kind of thing number one. Thing number two is you're very convincing and handsome, Adolin. And then thing number three is gonna be like, look, I'll make you a deal. You help me find Zahel, and I will help you heal or restore Shallan or do whatever it is your mission is in the Cosmere. Help you find Dalinar, help you whatever, help you stop the Ghostbloods. Mm-hmm. So whatever his mission is, he's like, you help me with this, I will help you with that. Yeah, it's a quid pro quo. He's like, because I think there's a place that we could go that will help with Shallan, which I think having her be a return would be so good. I don't know.
It would be really interesting. Like,
I don't know.
Because we have Wit, who has collected different forms of investiture. He is a Mistborn. He is now a Lightweaver. He has breaths. I'm pretty sure he can control sand at this point, too.
Yeah, he has sand in the books.
Well, you can have sand, but controlling it is a different thing.
Well, he's basically in all books.
Control sand. And, I mean, he knows Elantrian stuff, but he's got the Moon Scepter from Elantris, which, you know...
It just transmutes one form of investiture into another.
Yeah, but still, that's pretty sweet. So we've seen that it is possible to be invested in multiple forms, but I don't think anybody else is.
So I don't think we're going to get, like, if we talk about, like, a Cosmic Avengers, right? I don't think we're going to get a group of 6 who are all invested with all 6. But I think we'll get groups that, like, you have 2, and you have 2, and you have 2.
But aside from Wit, we haven't seen anybody else actually have more than one. Because even Vasher and Vivenna, as Zahel and Azure, are still only, you know, they still only have breaths. They weren't ever...
What about in the Sunlit Man? So, spoilers for those who didn't read the spoilerly chapter. Didn't he have more than one?
The Secret Project stuff. No, he was still...
I can't remember because...
He was still surge binding.
He was just surge binding?
I'm pretty sure
he didn't do anything else? I thought he might have done something else.
But it's like a weird form of... It's not Windrunner surge binding. He, like, switched orders.
Yeah, which
now
we're curious
got,
about,
like, he's got, like, alteration now. And apparently he killed his friend.
Oh. Another thing, getting back to Adolin.
Okay.
And Azure, and I really think their story is going to be bound together. Mm-hmm. Because I think Azure thinks she can take Zahel. I think she's like, if I find you, I'm going to kill you. Like, even though I don't know if she actually can, I think she thinks she can. Mm-hmm. But having another good warrior on her team is probably something she wants. And she might see that in Adolin. Like, you're really skilled. You don't know how to use other investitures, but you're really skilled. And so I think having him along, and also having that tie with Zahel, like, it's like, oh, you mean my own Blade Master?
That sounds an awful lot like Zahel. It's going to be like, you mean Vasher?
Or even there might be a bit of a drop, like, I beat him once. Just once.
Yeah, just once.
Yeah, that was just...
I'm pretty sure he let me win.
Yeah. I don't know. Something that'll be like, maybe I should take you with me sort of thing. But I think a part of that is also going to be because I think Zahel, and I mentioned this kind of in the beginning, and I think this is where it kind of comes up again, because I have in the beginning where Szeth is in prison, and they took Nightblood from him. Mm-hmm. And I think someone, which we'll find out here, Zahel stole Nightblood. It's like, screw this noise! Like, I brought Nightblood here to not cause problems. Mm-hmm. And now he's killing shards and doing this. It's like, so I think that something that he's been up to, that Brandon has alluded to in the spoiler live streams, is going to be, he's been sneaking behind the scenes. He's like, I'm taking that blade and I'm going. No more of this.
Peace.
Yeah,
I'm going to go find a planet where none of y'all exist.
Well, and I think that's kind of the point, right? He's like, I'm either going to figure out how to destroy it, or I'm taking it to some backwoods nowhere.
Yeah.
And so I think Zahel has stolen Nightblood and run away. And I think Brandon has alluded to that, in my opinion. I think it makes a lot of sense, because then Asher's will be like, look, you help me find him, and I will help you with your problem. And so I think it fits into that context. And so for me, in my theory, I think it fits all very nicely. Whether it's true or not, we'll have to wait and see. But I think that's where it goes. Any thoughts on that? No? You like it?
No.
Okay.
I just don't know if I have an argument against it right now yet.
All right.
Who's next?
Next is Wit.
Ooh.
I think we go from Adolin, because I think at this point, with Shallan being down and out, with Dalinar basically being gone, like, we've touched on the major characters, right? You can't get a point of view of Shallan if she's in a gym, and you can't get a point of view of Dalinar if he's out in the Cosmere somewhere.
If he's dead.
Or if he's dead. So I think your next point of view you jump to is Wit. And I think it'll be a short, but a actual chapter about Wit. And I think prior, I've had where Wit in the beginning is starting to figure out something's not right with me.
Yeah.
And then he goes to the Contest of Champions. And then I think Terravodium shows up at the Contest of Champions. And I think that's where Wit's like, you're not him. And I think
not race.
And I think Wit will just be standing there. He won't say anything. He'll just kind of be, but I think he just turns around and leaves. And I mentioned this in the Contest of Champions section, and Yasa's gonna be like, dude, this is the most important moment. I need everybody here. And he's like, and he'll wit his way out of it. He'll be like, oh no, you guys are good. But it's gonna be because he suspects something. It's gonna be, you're not Reyes. This is not how it's supposed to go.
What other memories do you think Race took from him, or Taravangian took from him, though? Because I don't think it was just the memories of their encounter. Because he took other memories, because that was an awful lot of breath to lose.
I don't know, but I think that will be where Wit figures it out. You're not Reyes. That's why there's something wrong with me. And I think Wit being Wit is going to have backups. I think he's going to have
or something.
Some way to restore what he has lost. And so he's going to leave planet.
Well, the issue though is once you remove a memory and put it into a copper mind, it's not in your head anymore. So you couldn't also put it into a breath, because also if the breath is taken away, then that memory is completely gone as well. There's actually a scene where Wit gives a little bit of breath to a young girl.
Not to the girl, to the doll. He makes it dance.
No, not in Stormlight. In
Stormlight.
No, in Warbreaker. He gives breath to a little girl and teaches her how to store the memory into that breath, and then tells her to give the breath back to him, and it takes away her memory. And so it's completely gone. So
that could be, we'll say, Stormlight versus Voidlight basics, right? But there might be a way to split/copy. We don't know yet.
That's true. So anyway, it just dawned on me that can't be the only memory that Taravangian would have taken away from him.
Probably not. But I think there's probably a way to copy. I think he either has a backup or a way to restore himself or a way to figure out, I lost this section of myself.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, tangent thought.
So that, I think that's one of the reasons he leaves, right? Also because I think his luck spurs him on. Like, he's going to be like, I've got this kind of antsy feeling. It's time for me to go. Yeah. So I think in this chapter, we'll get maybe even a perspective from Wit where he basically is like, God-killing weapons are missing. Dalinar's on the loose. Terravodium is possibly free. I don't really know how that all works out. I don't know. It could really go any way. I think Brandon's going to surprise us with how Terravodium... But ultimately, I think he's going to be free in a capacity. Whether
Terravodium is raising his army in one way or another. He's... Yeah. According to the rules of the Contest of Champions... No matter win or lose, he has to stay on Roshar, but it changes what lands he still gets to hold. If he wins, he gets to he gets a Lethkar and Herdaz and all the lands that he already owns. But if he loses, then he only keeps the lands that he already owns. Because Dalinar's like, they basically came to you of their own free will anyway.
But being a godlike creature, I think his focus is on the Cosmere.
Well, yeah.
And he can still
And
kind of
so-
meddle in over here.
So the difference will be, will he have his best troops, which will come from Alethkar, to be honest, or will he have to just deal with kind of the B troops? So he'll be working on raising his army to fight his Cosmere war. It'll just depend on how many people he gets to use.
See, and I think there might even be in this Wit chapter a nice little sweet moment where he's like, Yasna, my dear, I've left you to prepare for this war that's coming. Like, I think Yasna might know a little more than everybody else, because I think Wit would think that she's more prepared, right? And so I think in that he's like, it's time for me to go. I need to do some stuff, but I've prepared you enough. Do what we've talked about. And then everybody's gonna be like, what did you talk about?
Ah!
Yeah. And so I think that's gonna be the knowledge bomb there. We know Wit is leaving for all these reasons, but also he might drop a little, what did you guys talk about, sort of thing. Yeah. And then it might be a little sweet moment because I think Wit actually cares for Yasna and vice versa. So
their intellectual relationship is actually pretty nifty, because she's not a sociopath or someone incapable of feeling. It's just different things excite her. So for her, it's the intellectual connection that is exotic and exciting for her, which is why she put herself in the front lines of the war. She's like, I wanted to feel what it was like to be a front lines person. But she's like, but to be honest, I can't even accomplish that because I'm protected by shard armor.
Yeah. So I think that's where we leave that.
Yeah.
Okay, now for the big one. This is the one that everybody's been waiting for.
Yes, because you promised you would tell me what your idea is for his fifth ideal.
And everybody's gonna hate it. But I think this is on
preface it.
I think this is on purpose.
Okay.
The next character is Kaladin. I think we end the book how we began, which is with Kaladin's point of view. He's the hero character, right? So I think we end the book with Kaladin.
Okay.
And I mean, to oversimplify my theory, I think that's it. It just ends with Kaladin being, all right, I guess this is done. Because Kaladin doesn't want to be at war.
No.
He wants peace in himself and for everybody else. But that's kind of where we're going to, in my opinion, that's where we're going to leave the book. I think they would have tentatively defeated Odium, defeated Dalinar, the pseudo-fused Dalinar. The fused are basically going to be gone. There's going to be peace with the listeners, kind of. I've established that there's going to be an inner conflict there, but it's not really their problem.
Okay.
Yasna's now in charge. There's a new spiritual leader. So I think we've established the pieces for Era 2. We've made it enough of an end that you're like, oh, this is an end of a story. But there's more to be told if you read into it.
Yeah.
So basically, if you ended this at book 5, I wanted it to be an end. And I think that's how Brandon wants it. This is the end of the story. And the end is peace, right? There's peace in the land. Odium's defeated or away. Everybody's good for the most part. There's stuff still to figure out, but Yasna's got that. I don't have to go to war anymore, is what Kaladin's thought is going to be. And so I think Kaladin swears his fifth ideal, which is, I didn't put that there.
Did you put it at the top?
Maybe.
Oh, no, go back down. Right there.
Yeah. I think his fifth ideal, which he will have sworn after he beats Moash, which I will get to in a minute, what we do with Moash. I think he beats Moash. He kills him, but I think his fifth ideal is, I will help heal those I couldn't protect.
I think that's a pretty good one too.
So he gets to become that doctor-esque, that therapy person, that person that we've alluded to in the last book, right? Where he basically becomes a vet who has these roundabout circles where they talk about their experiences and he helps people work through them.
Introduces truly helpful therapy.
Yeah, but also more than that, healing, right? Because he's a doctor, so he's like, I might go from land to land and help heal people. If I can't protect you, I am at least going to help heal you. I don't care if you're my own or...
The Windrunners and the Edge Dancers are two orders that actually would work really well together.
And so I think that's...
Protection and healing.
That's who Kaladin becomes, and for a purpose. I think that's... I'm not going to say it here. I'll say it in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But that's where Kaladin's at peace. He's like, okay, there's a lot of turmoil in the land. There's a lot of broken people. There's a lot of this, a lot of that. But we're basically at peace. I'm now going to travel to the land, not as a Radiant. I think he's going to give up his status as a Radiant. He's going to be like, not as a Radiant, not as a Knight, not as a member of Irithiru or of Kholinar, but just me. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to heal those I can and kind of keep the peace, a little bit of a peacekeeper as well. Be like, I'm going to keep the peace amongst the borders, heal those I can, help those along the way. That is me. And that's what I'm going to do. And so Kaladin, much like the gunman at the end of a Western, is going to go off into the sunset. Mm-hmm. Finally kind of at peace. That's where we leave the end of this book. And I thought that would be a nice, sweet ending. He's finally at peace. He gets to finally do what he wants and help heal those. And I think his fifth ideal fits. All right. I know people think he's going to die. But getting into the end, so we've moved beyond part 4. That is the end of the book. That's how I envision, in my mind, the end of the book. We've set up all these pieces. Everybody's kind of at peace. People have gone this way, gone that way.
Odium's just doing his army stuff in his lands and not bugging anybody.
So then we get the epilogue, and his epilogues are always set up for other stuff. Mm-hmm. So these are more teases. I make these teases for further properties, but also for like Era 2, right? Mm-hmm. Epilogue part number 1 is going to be Terravodium and Dalinar, because in part 4 in the wrap up we didn't have a point of view from Dalinar, so I think Terravodium kind of just sitting back and be like, all right, well, I guess Roshar is what Roshar is right now. I can't really do much there.
But I've been working on my army.
Pointing to Dalinar, which we'll have a shift in perspective and be like,
this is Teravangian's log, by the way. It's like, army raising is going well.
Captain's log. But pointing to Dalinar is to be like, it's time to let you loose. And that's when we see Dalinar, and then like Dalinar goes off into the Cosmere. And so the implication is there, what did he just do? Where did he send him? Mm-hmm. We don't know. Next point of view would be Ishar. And I think Ishar is going to talk about how the Oath Pact has been broken. Mm-hmm. Odium is kind of subdued. And so here comes the evil machination outcome. Like, this is the tease for Era 2, right? The setting up of the bad guy, where he's like, we are finally unencumbered to become gods, is how I kind of summarized it. He's like, I'm no longer bound. Mm-hmm. I'm still a bondsmith. Mm-hmm. And I'm evil more than you guys know.
Ha ha ha. And
so I think that's where we have that. And the next is Mraize. So I've talked about how Sja-anat basically wants to become a pseudo-god. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be part of the conflict between Sja-anat, the actual fuse, so Sja-anat, Ba'at-mishram, but Ishar and the other heralds. I think we have this, we'll call it demigod battle, right?
Could an unmade be Ishar's vessel?
Yes, I believe Brandon's answered that question. I think it could be.
It'd be really interesting.
But I think because Sja-anat is able to do some stuff, like she's up there as far as unmade, but she can't do quite as much as Ba'at-mishram. But I think she has eviler intentions. I think she somehow, I don't know how, because we don't really know how it works yet, right? Mm-hmm. I think she somehow brings, not Mraize, I said Mraize. I think she somehow brings Moash back as her fused. So I do this on purpose. One, because we gave Kaladin his nice send-off. He's finally at peace. He gets to do what he wants. But as we set up all these things, and I think the last thing that we'll set up is Mraize delivering the whatever the thing is to Thydakar, and Thydakar just kind of sitting in his big old chair being like, it's about time.
Kelsier.
Yeah, Kelsier, that big old jerk.
He's
think
very anti-hero, isn't
I think those are kind of the tags, right? The epilogue stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I have the Moash being restored as a fused. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe he won't tease that here. Maybe he'll wait for a different book. I don't know. But I say that on purpose because as we get into Era 2, I think you have your main characters, which he's basically told us who the points of views are, which are going to be Yasna, Renarin, Taln. I've got them written down here. See, Yasna. I have a lot of stuff written down here.
Why do you have so much written down after the epilogue?
Because theory time.
Lift, Renarin,
Shalash Town, Yasna. So Lift, Renarin, Shalash Town, Yasna. So okay, that's the ones. Lift, Renarin, Shalash Town, Yasna. So things I think we have to get into, right, is Brandon has basically said the next series is going to focus more on the heralds. Mm-hmm. So I think we get to learn more about them, which means we don't get that in this book. I think we'll learn how they actually go back and forth in Era 2, not in this book. I think we'll learn how Talon actually got back without breaking the pact. Mm-hmm. In Era 2, not in this book. Like, this is why I had all this other stuff written down, because I had to check this off. I was like, well, if this is going to be here, it's probably not going to be over here. So I had to check it off. I was like, okay, this book. So all the questions that we still have that we're not going to get answered. So I put that here because Town, being one of the main point of views, means that we're going to get a lot of insight into the heralds, all of them. So I think we have kind of this demigod war, the unmade versus the heralds, but also the regular people kind of becoming pseudo demigods. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the major challenge that they're going to have to deal with. And then, cultivation, having her own bondsmith. Like, I think there's a lot to unpack. We could probably make that another video, which we probably should. But there's a lot to unpack, a lot that I think Brandon's saving for this. But here's why going back to my main point of why Moash comes back as a fused, either as a epilogue twist or later on, maybe he does that in Era 2, is because I think if you're going to change everybody around, like I've established how everybody's arc goes, right? You've basically cleared the board, which I think is fine, because you want to use new characters in your new era, right? Mm-hmm. But I think you still have to have something from the past. And I think Kaladin wandering around becomes that hero who the wandering shonen,
yeah,
or samurai, or Ronin,
the Ronin, yeah,
that's what it is. The wandering Ronin who comes out of the desert, randomly walks into town, saves the day, and then just kind of walks out.
Yeah,
and that's who Kaladin becomes, right?
Yeah.
But also, if there's new conflicts building up, blah blah blah, and you have Yasna dealing with it, you have Lift dealing with it, Renarin, blah blah blah. But then if you throw something into the mix, because I think Yasna is prepared enough, or will be, to deal with the heralds. I think she's smart enough to outsmart Ishar. I think that's where that's headed, right? Mm-hmm. But if it's Yasna versus Moash, I don't know. I think Moash is too focused.
It would be really interesting, though, because she naturally struggles with emotion, whereas he is completely devoid of emotion.
Yeah.
So it'd be really interesting to see the two of them fight, because it would be like a purely logical battle. But
I think that's kind of where it becomes, right? It's if they throw Moash into the mix, Yasna's be like, oh crap, not this guy.
Oh yeah, no, and she'd have a personal vendetta because he killed her father.
But then also, we need help. We need Kaladin. Where's Kaladin? No one knows. He's been traveling the world for 15 years, just kind of doing his whole lone Ronin,
his whole
Kaladin thing, healing people, helping people, and so he's the mysterious wandering hero. Yeah, and as the tumbleweeds come by, like that's Kaladin. But I think
the tumble rock beds.
But I also think that's where we kind of have the summation of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kaladin, finally good with himself, having done this for 15 plus years, in book 2, 3, 4, whatever of Era 2,
mm-hmm.
goes up against Moash, who's just gone full on evil, finally dug his own grave, and you have Kaladin who comes in this Era 2 to save the day. It's like
he seems very Bendu.
He's a Bendu, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I am neither good nor evil. I'm
the one in between.
Yeah.
But I think that's how satisfying would that be? Because I think there needs to be a resolution between Moash and Kaladin in this book.
Well, because they're opposites to each other. Like they have almost the exact same backstory.
Yeah. So if there's a resolution, I think there's two problems, right? One, they've kind of hinted that Moash might become effused. You can't have the resolution and have him become effused.
I don't think he will, just because of how the odium shard works and how Race was already like, you're never going to be.
Right. So I think that's a pseudo promise, but he's going to fulfill in a different way by having Ja not make him effused. But then also too, once you have Kaladin save the day, like have that resolution with Moash, he's basically like, that's it. That's all Kaladin has really left to deal with. Other than saving the day is Moash. After that, Kaladin should be good, which is why I left him going off into the sunset, right? But I also think it would be nice for Kaladin to kind of show up and either be like, I've saved enough people, I've done enough good work, blah, blah, blah. Now I need to put Moash down for good. Or I think that would be a nice little tie.
I either need to fix him in this moment or kill him.
No, I think at this point they've already had that, right?
Oh.
I think the resolution happens in this book. But I think if you go into Era 2, where now you have Moash as like a pseudo-fused, I think Kaladin then needs to just be like, okay, well, I'm the hero of ages. I'm the one from the past who is now going to come and beat up this guy who randomly shows up. I don't know. It's something I thought would be fun. We don't necessarily need, but I thought would be fun to kind of fulfill all the promises, which I know Brandon won't do, but I thought it would be fun. So that's a little bit of why I put that into an epilogue thing, to kind of tie into Janat, to kind of deal with what do we do with Moash. And so those are my teases for the end. Any thoughts on my teases, on something
I have
as a whole?
an additional thought. So Town, being the Herald of the Stonewords, that he's the strongest of will out of all of them, which is why he was the one who was able to last for 3,000 years on his own, holding the Oath Pact and holding them back. The Fused started to figure out a way around the Oath Pact to get to Roshar without having to completely get rid of the Oath Pact, and that was by going through Shadesmar. There's a very specific way that Ulim talks about it. He's like, we gotta go into the ocean so that they can cross over, and then we have to bring them back from the ocean and get them where they're supposed to be going, into the gemstones, and blah, blah, blah. So there's all of that. I wonder, because I don't believe he broke. I still don't believe he broke. I think he made... Why do you keep doing that? I think that he knew that the Everstorm was coming, that, you know, the Fused, the people who were torturing him, were taunting him about it. He's like, okay, the Everstorm's coming. There's nothing I can do by being here to stop this from happening. They will make it happen whether I hold the Oath Pact or not. I wonder if he made a deal with the Heavenly Ones, so the ones who are similar to the Windrunners, that's like Leshwi and them, who are more of the honorable ones. I wonder if he made a deal, let me go back to them to prepare them, and I will not stop the Everstorm.
Interesting.
So I will warn them that it's coming. You guys will still get to do your thing. You'll still get to come back too, but at least let me prepare them. And the Heavenly Ones, being who they are, would have been like, okay, sounds fair.
I could be down for that. I
Yeah.
think that's pretty good.
That sounds very Talon too.
That could be one of the things that maybe they throw in an epilogue twist instead of my Moash thing. Because my Moash thing is my one out there thing. Because I mentioned this in part 1. Brandon will do a lot of things we suspect.
Yeah.
And he's going to do a lot of things that we don't suspect. There's going to be...
In a good way.
In a good way. Hopefully. Because he does this in all his books where it's just like, oh, it's not how I saw that playing out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the stuff where we're like, that's a little on the nose or whatever it is, like, I think some of those will go that way and some of them won't. Much like I've mentioned, I think Dalinar is going to participate in the Contest of Champions. Yes, I think that's, while it's on the nose and they basically said as much, I don't think that's something he's going to mix up.
Okay.
Kaladin dying. Everybody on the internet thinks, well, I think he's setting like his path on Kaladin dying. It could happen.
I don't want it to.
I don't think that's something he's going to do.
Like,
but I think
with
somebody
all the
dies.
Good changes that Kaladin is also bringing. That would just be really sad for Roshar in its entirety. Like, he's bringing things like, and as somebody who has struggled with mental health issues, like seeing him help people through these things, it's like, why do you think this works? And the Ardents are like, well, because that's what everybody has always said. It's like, but have you tried anything else? No. It's like, he's making people think, and I like that. I don't want him to die.
So I think somebody's going to die, though.
Yeah, somebody's going to die.
At least one, probably multiple.
Please don't be Adeline either, though.
But the safe ones that we basically know about.
And Brandon could change his mind.
Well, so we have the point of view characters for the next era. So I marked them as safe. However, they could be flashbacks.
Yeah.
So, like, while I imagine Talon then will show up in the next era, he could be a flashback character. He might die in this book. Renarin might die in this book. Lift, well, he basically much said Lift's not going to die.
She's a kid. She's too important. The things about her and what cultivation did to her are too important to what's going forward.
Yeah, so I went through each of them, and I basically concluded, nope, I think all of these characters are, I'm going to mark you as safe. Like, I think they're all safe.
Yeah.
I think the one who possibly dies, other than Dalinar, I think Dalinar is dead or fused or both.
Mm-hmm. If he becomes fused, that's close. Well, because...
That's essentially dead.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Terravodium would be able to work some voodoo magic, even if he does die, and capture his soul still.
Maybe. But I think the other one who dies would be Shallan. And I think having 2 of the major 3 characters die, that's a lot. Adding more to that, I don't think you need to necessarily do. You could have minor characters die, etc. But
wrap them in a blanket, put them over here. You can have these back when you're nice.
But I think it's more satisfying to me. I mentioned in part 1, I think they die, they change, or they what did I say? Or they alter, something like that.
That's change.
That is change.
Leave. It was like leave, die, or change, or something like that. What were your 3?
I don't know.
Go up to the top. Resolution.
Oh, the resolution of their arc.
So yeah, their story ends, their story changes, or they die.
So I think Kaladin becomes the resolution. His story ends. Mm-hmm. There's basic peace in the world. He's dealt with Moash as far as we know. I don't think he needs to die. I think dying doesn't add anything to his character.
I think it detracts from his character if you kill him off.
I think it does too. So I put him as resolution. Dalinar and his resolution to his arc, I honestly think is too big. His resolution is everything must be perfect.
Yes, this is true. He either changes or dies.
I think he changes or dies. And in this case, a little bit of both. I think he dies, but he becomes a fused. So that's where I'm left with, right? He either dies or he becomes a fused. But I think if he dies, okay. We have Navani. But if he changes, it becomes more interesting. Now he's a fused. And I say that because if he becomes a fused, and then Dalinar goes off into the Cosmere, or Adolin goes off into the Cosmere, that makes Adolin a lot more interesting. because he's got dad issues he still hasn't dealt with.
Do you think Navani's too old to have kids?
I don't know how they're...
Wouldn't that be a wrench in all the plans, too, if they had an heir?
I don't know how their biology works. I'm going to say maybe. She's on the upper echelon, because they're described as older.
Yeah, she's either about to be unable or is already unable.
Yeah, I think of them in their older. 50s, which... possible, but usually doctors, it's not suggested.
Yeah, just because your body's old.
But also, they're a little bit different than us, so I think Dalinar could write that in.
Too, to heal themselves, so they could end up having babies later in life anyway.
So I don't think that's where that'll go.
Yeah,
But it's a good question.
It'd be really. I think it would throw a weird wrench in the mix because his one son doesn't want the throne, and the other son is.
Gone.
Is gone. So.
That's how I have him.
So they need an heir of some form for Urithiru.
I don't know if there will be an heir, but I think maybe that's where the spiritual leader, Navani, stays.
Yeah.
And so that's where I have her, because staying in the tower makes a lot of sense.
Though also, Yasna's trying to get rid of the whole hierarchy type thing. She's trying to go for a more democratic society for electing people. But Urithiru may stand apart from that because she's the queen of Alethkar, not the queen of Urithiru.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
So,
odd thought.
If we have a resolution in Kaladin,
mm-hmm.
and we have a death...
A change. We'll say a change in Dalinar.
We'll say a death in Dalinar, right?
Oh.
As I think it's important to look at things from both sides.
I'd put it more as a change, though, because even if he dies, it's still a change.
If he just flat out dies, let's say he becomes a fuse, but then they use the Racium dagger to kill him.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Let's just say he flat out dies.
Okay.
I don't think you then also kill Shallan.
Yeah.
So here's
needs a change.
So here's my question. If Kaladin does resolution,
mm-hmm.
and Dalinar does death, that means you have to kind of do change for Shallan. How does she change? I don't think there's a good change that would be satisfying to me.
I know at some point Radiant is going to need to be the Radiant personality is going to need to be reabsorbed by Shallan, because Radiant is still around, and they've agreed to it until Shallan feels comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I could see her making another personality again, but not out of desperation, just to have another personality.
So here's one reason why I go against change and more towards death. If she changes, because she is becoming a little bit different. She now has 2 blades.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's a Deadeye, which kind of fits with Adolin, right? They're kind of a pair.
Mm-hmm.
But if Adolin and Shallan are around in Era 2,
mm-hmm.
wouldn't they kind of be the focus? Because you have your point of view characters, and I feel like they would then be the focus. But
unless both of them just go world hopping together, which they could. I mean,
well, and that's where I kind of have it, right? I don't think they would just casually let's go world hopping like Shallan would.
Oh, Shallan 100% would.
I don't think Adolin would.
Yeah.
I think we have to force Adolin into the Cosmere, and I think we do that by not only is your dad dead and gone, but now your loved one.
Yeah, now your wife is going places.
So I think that makes too much sense. I think you have resolution Kaladin, change for Dalinar, and death for Shallan. Well, and I'm gonna say pseudo death. She's in a gem, and he's gonna try and restore her, which in my mind canon until Brandon writes it. So 18 years from now, when you guys can type in a comment. But is if she gets to become a returned, she won't be the same.
She won't be.
But neither will Adolin, because he would have gone on this adventure
mm-hmm.
to make that happen, and so he won't be the same because adventures change us.
But what if in this time Endowment decides I won't take your memories? Because when she returns a person, she takes their memories on purpose so that they can actually live a new life and do what they are meant to do on their return.
Yeah.
But maybe this time she's like, I won't take your memories because you have, a husband and you have your Lightweaver abilities and you have...
Maybe. We don't know a lot about Endowment.
No, we don't.
So we don't know
We
how
only
she
have
would,
the one book.
we don't know how she or he would react to.
I'm pretty sure Endowment's a woman.
I think so too, but
the vessel is.
We don't know how they would react to this whole thing.
Yeah, somebody of another world.
Yeah. So I think those are our endings of our three main characters. I think it makes a lot of sense. I tried to form their arcs leading up to those moments. Her and
Light Song would have.
And I tried
really
to.
Well.
Yeah, they would. And I would try to place in other moments that kind of make all this happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I started my theory. That's how I ended up going down a massive rabbit hole and writing my version of the book.
What, 17 pages?
It's like 17 pages long.
Over here on a Google Doc.
And then some ancillary stuff for Era 2, which we might get into in a different video. But I think mostly we just disagree whether Zeth's going to be in prison, right?
I think so.
So tell me what you guys think. Tell me whether you like any of it, you hate any of it. Go back and watch some of our other parts. I know it's kind of long, but so are Brandon's books.
Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to support us so we can get a new microphone for Jason, check out our coffee if you want.
Who needs a microphone?
But, you know, that's cool. Whatever. Thanks for being here, guys.
Yep.
If anybody's watching, hope you had fun.
Bye.
So we're gonna go to...